Alright, here we go, continuing with the build of the HPI Blitz ESE Pro. I'm going to be doing the MIP ball diff now. This is actually included in the kit. This is not an aftermarket set. It's included right in there with the Pro version. It's one of the upgrades they give you. Now, also included in that kit is a different instruction sheet. It's actually a separate piece of paper that they include right next to where the ball diff bag is. So be sure to use this instruction set because the one that's in the original manual will not make sense as it's for the old original HPI diff. First, attaching the rings to the out drives, lightly coat both sides of these. I like to put a little bit extra on here just to help get those rings to stick. Next, the all-important lube that's going to go into the little slots where the balls go. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop the balls in, and I'm plugging up the center hole with a finger, and then we're just going to go ahead and dump all these in there. And now I'm just going to go around with the back of my finger with my fingernail and push each one of those in to its hole. I'm going to go ahead and stick one of the ball bearings in there. Onto this, you drop the completed or assembled gear with the balls in it. Just drop that on there. Then in goes another ball bearing in the center. Building the thrust bearing is generally the most annoying part of making a ball diff. Get some of the other type of grease that's in here. And what I'm doing is just creating a platform of grease, of stickiness. All right, here goes nothing. Just start dropping those balls on one by one and just verify that all of those are up against the shaft of the bolt. There that goes. And now you can see it has formed a nice little sandwich in there. That's going to get inserted through this assembly that I put together before. Your other out drive is going to go on top of that little coil spring. Just going to go ahead and drop that down, and that will be followed by this T-nut. Now, the instructions that came with this particular set here say to tighten this all the way down until it stops. You don't want to tighten it super tight, just hand tight, barely hand tight, so basically to where it stops, and then loosen it 1/4 turn. So a very important thing is you do not want to have any slip in the diff. Slip in the form of the type of slip that you'd have from a slipper clutch. So I'm going to put two tools through the opposite ends of these out drives here, and just to kind of get a feel for it, I want to see if I can physically turn, holding the out drives in place. I want to see if I can turn this gear at all. I should not be able to turn this gear by hand. And right now I can see that there is a little bit of slip in there. I am able to turn this gear. So that means that I need to tighten this down just a little bit more. At this point, you go back to the regular HPI manual to proceed with building up the transmission. Now, this is the first time we get to see the plastics that they use here. Basically, they have a color scheme that is coded. Basically, the lighter the color of the plastic, the more firm or the more brittle and strong that it is, so it's going to have less flex to it. It's not quite that simple. There are actually different formulations of plastics and mixes with fibers going from one to the next, but that's the general idea, is that the darker colored plastics in these ESE kits are more flexible, whereas the ones that are lighter are just a stiffer material. HPI does recommend that you use grease. They have their heavy duty grease for the gears of the transmission. Oftentimes I won't use grease on a transmission on the gears directly, especially if I'm going to be running with a light motor, like for a 17.5 motor class, where you need all of the power you can get because it's limited, and thus you need as little resistance as possible. It's actually often quite safe to run transmissions without grease, but this one does have two metal gears and in this case one plastic gear. So I'm going to go ahead and put just a light bit of grease in there. I'm not going to fill it up. I don't want to add a whole lot of resistance to the drivetrain unnecessarily, but I do want all of the teeth to be getting some amount of lube on them, just to keep the lash down and to keep them from powdering up their edges. This is a upgrade piece that they include with the Pro kit that has this extra large heat sink section on it. It's a pretty heavy unit, but it's nice looking and nice to have a little bit of extra heat sink action, even if it's not the most efficient design. The slipper is a dual disc unit. Make sure that you get those discs keyed in there properly and that they're not hanging part way off and getting compressed in there all lopsided. Pre-compress the slipper spring a few times, just like I did with the Diff. How much slip to have in the slipper will, of course, vary depending upon what motor that you're running and what surface that you're on and what tires that you're using. So there is no one setting that is correct, and it will change as the discs get broken in, what the actual position of the nut that is ideal. So I'm just going by what they say to start with, which is tighten it all the way in and loosen it 1 1/4 turns. I'm not going to worry about trying to get it right. I'm not even going to test it here until I have the vehicle fully assembled and I can actually try it out on a surface with tires, with the motor in there, all good to go. And of course it wouldn't hurt to remember that I was assembling this with stainless steel screws, so we're going to have to go back and undo them and put them back in. Oh well. So there we go. Transmission put together. I just threw a motor on here. I want to run this with a low power configuration to begin with, something that's going to feel kind of like a 17.5. This is just a small ribbed can, 3000 kV brushless motor. I'm going to go ahead and seal this up and get the gear cover on there. This is just pretty much a guess at the gearing for this one based on the gearing chart that they do give you. This is a different size of motor than is normally used on these cars. So we'll see how this goes. Next up will be the assembly of the steering setup on this truck. I'm gonna go pick out a nice steering servo for it and get together centering that up and work on the assembly, and I will do that in the next video.